We've been doing a series this month on what is this about a feel-good religion or spiritual program. And today's topic is in the driver's seat. You may have some thoughts about this from your earlier days, like if you were under the age of 16, or when you were under the age of 16, and the driver's seat was a dream that you'd been begging for to come true. You know, when you get that driver's license, when you get your hand on that wheel. If you are under the age of 30, it's an automobile insurance premium that's about the size of the mortgage on the house. If you're under the age of 50, it may be an SUV that's longer than the first truck that Henry Ford built, which I saw one of yesterday, with an engine in it that'll pass everything but a gas station. You know about those SUVs? Yeah. And for the rest of us who fall in the category perhaps of 50 or over, it's the prayer treatment we do every morning and every night. Please, God, don't let the DMV take my driver's license away. So in the driver's seat, even in our automobile-oriented society, we sometimes remember that this phrase means more than how we propel ourselves through traffic. It means more in our lives than the wheels, if you will, in our driveway. In the driver's seat is also the way we describe what's going on in our lives. Who's in charge and where we're going. And that's the topic for today. Who's in charge of me? Who's in charge of you? And where are we going? We've been looking all this month at the ways that the one mind, which is God's mind, is operating in and through each one of us all the time. And though we sometimes tend to forget it, we must remember that there's a divine nature in each one of us. And that each of us, and through each of us, we are given the permission to express that. And by given the permission, that's that gift of inheritance that I mentioned earlier. That it comes with the package, that each one of us has that gift within us to welcome and to enhance the expression of God by means of us. So this divine nature is always in us. It's always available for us to use. And our use of it is what enables us to be free to be ourselves in our thoughts, in our ideas, in our intentions, and in our actions. We've also this month been exploring how this principle of life works. How much we can take of good, of pain, of joy, of grief, of progress. Because however much we choose to accept, well, that's how much shows up in our lives. Sometimes we also need to remind ourselves that life is like that. That we come into this plane of existence or expression with all the parts and all the directions, but not necessarily all in place. Some of you may remember a talk I did back some time ago entitled Some Assembly Required. And that's sort of what I'm talking about here. We've got all the parts. We've even got the instructions. But we haven't necessarily followed those instructions or those intentions or those directions to put into place the finished product. So our challenge, our purpose, is to build on our consciousness, to expand and enhance our awareness, to see ourselves transforming the bits and pieces into what it is we're capable of being. Both of the sharing in the light, of standing in the light this morning was about that very thing, wasn't it? No coincidence. That's living life with meaning and with purpose. So, this brings us today to what in the 3rd chapter in The Science of Mind, Dr. Holmes talks about what the principle of life, the divine mind, does. He reminds us that it's no secret, but in order for it to be revealed, it does have to have an outlet. Bingo. That would be you. That would be me. The outlet. But it can only give to us what we're willing to take. And it can only supply us with what we are willing to understand and to accept. Because this universal life force personifies itself through humankind in varying degrees, according to each person's receptivity to it. So it's always there. It's always around us and within us. It's our receptivity and acceptance of it that causes it to come into form in our expression. So if you're still wondering why your in-laws or your next-door neighbor or the Osbornes are all messed up, well, that's that other talk I did not too long ago about judge not. Some of you will remember that. See, what universal mind does through each one of us is based upon what we ourselves understand and accept and agree to. Life is not something that we can put off or plan for in the future. Remember that old saying, life is what's happening to you when you're making other plans? Life is working through us. Intelligence is working through us. Spirit, essence is working through us, whether we admit it or not, and whether we benefit from it or not. We're using this God-givingness even when we just wake up in the morning, suck air for 16 hours, and go back to bed. I want to give you an example. This is an example of putting off involving ourselves in life, in denying taking responsibility for our evolution, in avoiding being in the driver's seat. So here's the story. A young woman brings her fiancé home to meet her father, her parents. And after dinner, her mother tells her father to find out something about this young man. So the father invites him into his study for a drink. So tell me, the father says to the young man, what are your plans? I'm a Torah scholar, the fiancé replies. A Torah scholar. The father thinks about that for a minute. Admirable. But what do you do? What are you doing to provide a comfortable home for my daughter to live in as she is accustomed to? And the young man replies, I will study, and God will provide for us. And how will you buy her a beautiful engagement ring, such as she deserves and expects? The father asks. I will concentrate on my studies, responds the younger man, and God will provide for us. Now the father's beginning to show some concern. What about children? He said. How will you support children? Don't worry, sir. God will provide, comes the answer. So the conversation proceeds like this, and each time the father questions this young idealist, as you've already determined in the Jewish faith, insists that God will provide. So later, after the young couple has left, the mother corners the father and asks excitedly, well, how did it go? After a brief pause to collect his thoughts, the father answers, he has no job and he has no plans, but the good news is he thinks I'm God. Well, thank God our prayers, our spiritual mind treatments do not get put on hold. There is no intermediary putting us off or directing us elsewhere, and in fact, God, Divine Spirit, doesn't even have voicemail. Whenever we speak our word in affirmative prayer, it goes straight to source. Because, you see, spiritual principle is really very simple. It's the nature of the universe to give us what we are willing to accept. Let me say that again. It is the nature of the universe to give us what we are willing to accept. Spiritual wisdom says that God manifests through everything. The mechanical laws of nature are set and immutable. But our spontaneous recognition of these laws gives us the power to bring them into practical use in everyday life and experience. That's what living life is all about. It's making choices, it's volition, it's conscious action. And especially that's what living life with meaning and purpose is about. It's putting our attention on our intention, which means that's where our energy goes. Wherever the energy flows, that's what shows up. So these laws of the universe are to be trusted, but we must come to understand them in order to use them. Which begs the question, how do I understand them? Well, I have some answers where that's concerned. I have several, as a matter of fact. And even more than that you will find on your own as you begin to reach out and broaden and expand your experiences through this growing consciousness, which was pegged this morning in Standing in the Light. You heard it in both instances. We get to make the conscious choice and take the conscious action to learn. And that's one of the reasons we come here and that we go to the midweek gatherings on Wednesday night, and now the opportunity at Tutu's house to explore this as well. We also have classes. For those of you who have been on the website, and I know some of you have looked at this already, there's a list of classes that's a page long, actually a little over a page long, of accredited classes that we teach, of elective informational classes that we teach, of the workshops now that we're doing up in Waimea, that are all designed to support you and to guide you in learning ways to live your life better, to expand your understanding of how universal laws work for you or seemingly against you. You see, it isn't about the natural laws, the natural physical laws or the natural spiritual laws of the universe working against any one of us. It's us working against them, trying to bring something about which is not in that divine plan. And any one of us can take, and some of you have taken a number of our accredited classes. Going to be starting one or more of those in just a few weeks. And as we do that, you check the website because the information will be up there well in advance of the time those classes start and where, as well as checking the Tutu's House website and calendar will enable you to follow that information as well. Where our midweek gatherings are concerned, if you are on our mailing list and signing the guest registry puts you on our mailing list, you will get a weekly email that also identifies what we're doing during midweek gatherings. So there's another way that you can utilize these principles that Science of Mind teaches, and that's, brace yourself now, getting up 15 minutes earlier on Sunday morning, and coming at 9:30 here and joining us in a meditation service that we do, which is a few moments of silence to center ourselves, followed by affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment, which can be geared to any individual or more general in developing these positive and now moment approaches to the conditions and the challenges in our lives, which is an opportunity to be in that energy. You see, it's all about the energy. We love to come here. We love each other. We love the energy in this room. When you walk out of this room, that energy goes with you. We bring the energy to this room. We grow the energy in this room. That doesn't mean we don't put it in the walls. We do, in a metaphorical sense. But it's not the room. It's who's in it and what we're doing that generates that. So we love being in each other's company because it is, call it feel good if you like, and tell me what's the problem with that. And feeling good being together and in being positive and beginning to understand that each of us is that unique and individualized creation of life energy, of creative intelligence, and that there is magnificence in that. Just because I haven't expressed all of it yet just means I'm not through yet. I have more to do on this plane and whatever comes next. There are also books, DVDs, downloads from the internet. So much in the way of positive guidance that carries with it this spiritual connection. Up in Tutu's house, we're talking about this multi-pronged approach, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual coherency in our lives, to where the balance that we develop in consciousness enables us to move forward as an integrated being. And although in many instances in our lives we advance more quickly in some areas than others, what that tells us is that if I am operating a very high level of consciousness where prosperity is concerned, but the relationships in my life not so good, what I know is that I can lift my consciousness where relationships are concerned, clear up here where my prosperity consciousness is. Because the consciousness is growing this way as well as this way. So this is a really good thing to know, that I am a coherent expression, and that I may work more strongly in one area for a while than I do in another. But I have that capability in every area of my life. It's where I put my attention. And I can't put my attention on all of it at once. I've already demonstrated that. So allowing myself to focus on what I feel needs attention, or that I prefer to put my attention on, not necessarily to the exclusion of everything else, but as I become more proficient at it here, that proficiency automatically carries over to those other areas as well. And then for those of you who have bought the books, bought the DVDs, bought the various downloads onto the iPhone or the MP3 or whatever, then it's a question of actually reading or listening to them, isn't it? Yes. And making notes. If you're like me, you probably have stacked on the nightstand, stacked on the TV stand. It's in my pocket. I just haven't accessed it. So it's a question of remembering how excited you were when you heard about that particular offering and going back and seeing what it says. So these are the things that you and I can do. These are the choices that we can make. These are the conscious actions that we can take to do more in our lives than just that breathing in and out every day, and then wondering why life isn't treating us better, or why we are on terminal hold in somebody else's voicemail. The principle here is a simple one, folks. It's why not use it all the time? There's unlimited power in the universe. Why not use it by choosing to live a fully conscious life, learning everything you can learn about how the universe can and will support you, encourage you, guide you. Because what this principle of life does is to make itself available. And then the rest is up to us to use in whatever way we choose. So I can almost hear the thoughts dancing through the room. I knew there was a catch to this. I knew I was going to get in over my head. I knew the premise of a sure thing was too good to be true for me. And if that's what we think, if that's what we believe, then that's what it becomes. Once it becomes what we believe, it becomes who we are. And that's what Ernest Holmes calls courting the particular presence of a definite concept. There's no judgment in that statement. There's no negativity in that statement. It's just a statement of results, isn't it? Courting the particular presence of a definite concept. So if that's what's always at work, why not court universal possibility to flow into and through the particular channels that serve us best in our lives? Why not direct it in a positive way? What do you got to lose? Remember the analogy that we've talked about in the past about these universal laws working the way the law of electricity works? Well, here's another one to kind of think about. This is from Mary Manning Morrissey. She says, electricity is a dynamic force that can be beneficial or dangerous. For example, it can light up a room or it can shock us. So too, there is this single power in the universe. It's not a force for good, it's not a force for evil. Those are human-made judgments. It's not a force for good, it's not a force for evil. It's the application of that power that brings forth the good. It's the application. And you are who and what applies it. So each one of us gets to decide if we're going to use this power in our lives for our own good, and how we're going to use this power in our lives for our own good. That's what being in the driver's seat means. It's really the scientific application of a universal principle. See there how easy that is? Each one of us can do that. That's precisely what we are. We are appliers of standard universal principles. In that way, you might call us spiritual scientists, because these are scientific principles that I'm talking about applying. So it's definite that the application of these principles is definite. Each state of thought, each intention, each action touches the same basic process, but draws forth a different and definite result. This is what Ralph Waldo Emerson meant when he said, unity passes into variety. Another way we can say that is that God expresses itself through the individualization or the particular presence of each one of us. So each of us is in our own driver's seat. Each of us can have the realization that God is all there is, and we're it. It's no secret that we are living our heritage. That life is living by means of each of us. And it's no mystery either. It's metaphysical, beyond the physical, but it's not mysterious. It's a constant unfolding, and it's as dependable as anything could possibly be. So remember that metaphysical means to transcend or to go beyond the physical to the science of being. It's what William James called an attempt to think clearly and consistently. Clearly and consistently. I love that idea of thinking consistently. Like thinking all the time. Because we are thinking all the time. What we sometimes need to pay more attention to is what we're thinking all the time. So that's our realization of what the power of mind, universal mind, can do. It's our realization that this is the same power which moves in and through our individual minds. So today, right here, right now, I invite you to give yourself a pat on the back and a hug for recognizing your own willingness and love of self that permits you, that urges you to live these principles. I invite you to accept that you're worthy and deserving of all the good that the universe has to offer. I invite you to acknowledge that your own devotion to these possibilities, which you're demonstrating incidentally by being here today, to listen, to learn, to question, to grow. All of these things are the indication that you're courageous. You've shown that by exposing yourself to the greatest ideas brought forward like people like Ernest Holmes, Ralph Waldo Emerson, James, and on back into history. If you begin to trace these principles back into history, you will find them showing up in priceless philosophies within the overall structure of most religions. These truths exist, not always demonstrated, but they are there to be demonstrated. So put yourself in the driver's seat and allow this magnificent universe to serve you. And so it is.